Tim, I turned on the camera. I did that with my mind.
Alright, so we just watched Anchorman 2 in theaters. We just got out not even 5 minutes ago. I'm Tim.
Chokey 2080.
And,
well, he's Chokey 2080. I'm Ned. You know who I am. This is my channel.
the best thing I can explain the movie as is a great big bowl of what the f***. Are you really texting?
Yeah.
We're in review.
I know. This was not the sequel we deserve. This was the sequel we needed.
It was so good that I feel like I just got bent over by a Tyrannosaurus Rex and raped by a Stegosaurus repeatedly for 2 hours until my sides were bleeding. You're really having a go at the texting.
Yeah, that was Dad. Before we actually get to talking about the movie, why not discuss the previews that we saw?
Which ones?
All of them?
Okay, would you like to start?
First one was the Tom Clancy story that we talked about in the last review. Still looks kind of boring. I mean, I love Tom Clancy's work.
So, American Dad the movie. We got it.
Yeah. American Dad the movie. Written by Tom Clancy.
Explosions, CIA, yada yada yada, more explosions. With guns. I actually thought, what was it? What was the cartoon called?
The cartoon? Oh, something in Peabody?
Yeah,
the new movie?
Sherman and Peabody.
Sherman.
Sherman and Peabody actually looked good. But the movie that was directly before that...
The new Michael Bay movie.
Yes, the time-traveling movie looks insane. I want to see that. That looked incredible. It's obviously it's Michael Bay, but you know what? What I was expecting from Michael Bay for his next movie was the typical explosion, but he actually went a different route. He actually is not doing explosions; he's doing time warp, and there looks like there'll be some sort of like plane crashes and stuff like that. But I mean, it's really kind of like the butterfly effect in its own fashion.
It's the butterfly effect with time travel, which is what Butterfly Effect was about.
Well, except instead of being one person, it's a group of friends.
Yeah.
And it actually looks kind of interesting and intriguing. That's all the previews that I remember.
Oh, one thing I needed to add about Sherman and Peabody. Patrick Warburton voices Hercules. I want this.
I want the mini Trojan horse, that's all. All I have to say so finally we're going to get to the movie. The movie in itself was incredibly awesome. I didn't expect the actors that they had towards the end, which they used Will Smith, Jim Carrey, the really big his name?
I know a lot of really big tall
The one from the last movie who was in the Anchorman battle.
Vince Vaughn?
Vince Vaughn, thank you. I really didn't expect to see him in a sequel. Oh, what I forgot to add to the review was 22 Jump Street.
That was it.
22 Jump Street, if you like the first one, I guess the second one looks like it's going to be alright.
It's going to be more of the same, it looks like.
Well, it's kind of funny because one of the scenes that they show you is... they go and visit the jail of the two people they got locked up, and it referenced the fact that the guy shot off his dick, and and it's just, you have to see the trailer for it. Look up the trailer for 22 Jump Street, and if you like the first one, you're probably gonna like the second one. But back to Anchorman 2, I will actually have to say it was way more than I expected, especially for a sequel. It surpassed all expectations. It definitely beat the first one. It had a stronger storyline, and it had more jokes than I could ever expect. It had a good family ending, including Dobie.
We'll get to that. The funny thing is that for the past few years, I've hated Will Ferrell. And I'm not just saying that because Christmas is the season to hate Will Ferrell because Elf plays on every bloody network.
You know, my sister actually collects Will Ferrell movies.
Then again, she likes Tim Burton, so.
Well, Tim Burton, I like Tim Burton, most of his movies. Some, But,
like, I kind of have a thing with Will Ferrell where I hate it when he plays the same character in almost every movie where it's like the screaming man-child who can't function properly due to, like, some kind of, like, strange autistic nature that everybody just passes off as, oh, he's quirky. And then I'm going to turn completely back around and say that that character works in the Anchorman movie. And it works in this movie. Like, in this context, it works well. But Talladega Nights, Elf, every other time he's tried to sell that same
Talladega
character.
Nights was a good movie, but I will agree with you on Elf. Elf was a really bad movie, but it was also supposed to be a children's movie. But yeah, I agree. He does play the same character over and over again, like Step Brothers, and but Anchorman 2 definitely reached expectations. If you like the first one, you're gonna love the second one. That's guaranteed. It starts off a little slow. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah.
It does start off a little slow, but it eventually, the jokes do start rolling. The movie is 2 hours long. That is a downside if you like shorter movies. But getting to the start of the movie, the movie starts off with Will Ferrell. He actually gets fired from his old news team, and his wife gets promoted to evening news, so prime time. And he tells his wife either quit.
Yeah, it's me or the job, I believe is what he said.
Yeah, it's me or the job.
And I turned to you and said, it's going to be the job. And
well, of course. That's how it works in a movie. But so he goes on, and that's how his adventure starts. It starts off 6 months later, him working at SeaWorld, and making a scene, and
I paid a homeless man to spoon with me. I haven't felt a woman's touch in 3 months. While he's drinking scotch on stage.
Will you kiss me? No. Will she kiss me? No.
Will you kiss each other?
Then he tries to hang himself because of that, and he ends up doing it to like a pool table style.
Yeah, like fluorescent light.
And it falls down, and then a guy from New York, from GNN, I don't want to spoil everything, comes in and...
No, dude, we're doing a review, we're spoiling.
Well, I don't want to 100% spoil because there's more jokes in there. I want to leave to the movie. So the guy from this news network comes in and offers him a position in New York. The news network is called GNN.
Global News Network.
Global News Network. And he comes in and he invites Will Ferrell to come partake in the job.
I love how we keep calling him Will Ferrell, not Ron Burgundy.
Well, Ron Burgundy. It's okay, in context, it's Ron Burgundy. So Ron Burgundy starts his trip off by going to look for his...
It's kind of like Beer Fest. They're getting the gang back together.
Correct. And he starts it off, and he ends up finding the sports guy. I forgot what his name was. Mr. Whammy. And finds him where... he was being fired, so he faked an injury and bought a chicken stand.
No, he bought like a wing house.
And he's selling bats as chicken. Like, he calls them, what is it? The chicken of
the cave.
So he eventually gets him to go, and then he goes and has to find the next guy. Well, what was his position?
His job?
Yeah.
He was... like, they play it off like he's a porn photographer because he's got the 80s.
Well, no, not that. What was the guy's character? The guy who had Sex Panther in the last one, in the first Anchorman. I forget.
He's just the co-anchor.
He's the co-anchor.
Yeah.
So they end up finding him, and he's actually doing pretty well for himself. They play it off like he's a pornography photographer, but he's taking kitten pictures. Like the kitten inspirational...
He creates lolcats in the 80s.
Of inspirational kitten posters.
I Hate Mondays, hang in there.
And so they end up getting him to go, but he's actually doing pretty well for himself. And then they have to go look for Brick. And
Oh, God.
this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's earlier on, so
The thing is, though, is that they spoiled this scene because it's in the trailer.
Now, I didn't see the trailer, so it was really funny to me. So Brick actually thinks he's dead.
No, everyone thinks that he's dead because he swam out to sea to pet a dolphin.
Yeah, and didn't come back. So I didn't, but they're
Dude,
having
it's the first act. It's not a spoiler.
they're having a funeral for him, and Brick comes up to speak at his own funeral, saying how much he misses Brick. And they have to explain to Brick that he is Brick and he's not dead. And so finally they end up in the RV and they're traveling to New York. And they're all sitting in the back
Drinking beer.
drinking beer, and the dog is staring at them from the cockpit. There's no one driving. Ron Burgundy gets up to cook some, fries?
No, it was chimichangas.
Chimichangas in the deep fryer.
Hey, why do you have these bags of bowling balls right here? And what's up with
the
these?
live scorpions?
I knew they were setting that up.
All right.
Something bad is going down.
And of course, you can sense a cruise control joke coming up. As soon as it happens, it goes into a slow motion thing, and they just start getting berated with the bowling balls, the scorpions. Baxter, the dog, actually ends up biting the
sports dude.
the sports dude, and they just flip through the air, and it's a slow motion scene. So they finally get over that, and they drive this beat up RV to New York. They get to New York, and they go to meet the newsroom, and they get introduced. And this guy named Jack Lime. They almost get into an altercation, but they don't. They meet their boss, Linda Jackson.
Yeah,
Linda Jackson.
I blanked on it too.
So they go upstairs to meet Linda Jackson. A white guy walks in, and Ron Burgundy goes to shake his hand. And there's a black lady with him, of course, being Anchorman. Of course, the black lady is going to be Linda Jackson. So Linda Jackson...
Because it was the only lady in the room.
Whoa,
You don't name a man Linda.
Well, so anyway, he tries going back to his wife, and his wife is now with a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist...
The running joke with the psychiatrist is that because
We'll get there.
Ron Burgundy doesn't understand what psychology is.
He doesn't know it. Yeah, he doesn't know what psychology is, and he's reading Ron Burgundy and all that. And Ron Burgundy gets upset and tries hitting him, but completely misses. And he's sitting there and he swings and misses, and he goes, "Stop! Stop reading my mind." And that becomes a running joke throughout the movie.
To the point where their kid actually starts mimicking him.
Yeah, Ron Burgundy has a kid too, which is insane.
Named Walter.
It's ironic. So anyways, they start going through, and he starts working for the news anchor, and he ends up challenging Jack Lime to a anchor off.
Yeah, they have a bet. It was, if your ratings are better than mine, then I leave the city and I never pick up a newspaper again.
And Will Ferrell has 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. slot, while Jack Lime has primetime. So eventually...
And Pahey, Jack Lime is meant to be the... he's meant to be the antagonist, the big bad. He has, perfect hair, the perfect, chiseled
What I like
chin.
about this movie, there's multiple antagonists, which was nice, because you weren't expecting some of the things that happened.
Well, this guy's clearly meant to be the antagonist.
Yes.
He's played up to be the antagonist.
Exactly. And so Jack Lime, they run it through, and the bet was if Ron Burgundy can beat Jack Lime's rating, Jack Lime has to change his name to Jack Lame. And if Ron Burgundy loses, he quits being a news anchor and stops reading the news and stops doing news period and just leaves. So they end up doing this, and they come up with a new philosophy. Why are we telling the people what they need to hear? Why don't we tell them what they want to hear? And it actually creates what we know as our standard news system now. So the whole movie goes through a whole spiel, talking about, changing news to a modern standard instead of the original, what had happened, the true story, yada, yada, yada. So a whole bunch of things.
Because not a lot of people understood about Anchorman. It takes place in, the 70s, the 80s.
Right, and this one's more based in the 80s.
Right.
80s, 90s.
No, definitely 80s.
Well, MTV's just coming out, so 80s. And they go through the movie, and they're going through... And, Jack Lame at this point, because he ends up losing,
Because of how they switch, like, the whole news thing, their ratings just skyrocket, typical
And
movie spiel.
So Will Ferrell's character, Ron Burgundy, ends up...
His name is in the title. It's called The Ballad of Ron Burgundy.
The legend continues. So, it continues on, and eventually his news team gets mad at him because he's doing all the wrong things to create news stories and get more ratings. And it's all about the ratings. So he eventually ends up doing it on himself and gets a live news chase. And he gets the ratings skyrocket, but he ends up missing his son's science fair that his son worked really hard on. And this is part of the downplay of the movie, where it starts to become a little sad, but the jokes are rolling at this point. And to the point they're playing sad music and you just can't stop laughing. Brick has met a woman that is worse than Brick. Like, Brick is more intelligent than her.
And can I say something?
Go ahead.
I hate the Brick character. Like, all of his jokes just make me cringe.
I love them so much.
The reason for that, he reminds me of myself.
What? Why? How? You know what? If you love Brick in the last movie, you're gonna love him now. I think they pulled Brick back a little bit. Steve Carell could have done so much better. That's the actor's name, right? Steve Carell?
Yeah, that's Steve Carell.
And
they Flanderized his character, really.
And they pulled it back because I really, really, really loved him in the first one. But they pulled him back and he had less jokes. And it was a lot funnier in the first one with him. But the overall movie was a very, very funny movie. So back to the story. So now the entire news team is mad at Ron Burgundy, but he's pulling in the ratings. He's got a boss that owns an airplane company.
No, he's working with the Australian airplane company. He has stocks in the company.
No. He owns the company.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
Oh.
He owns the company, and he was starting the new, GNN. He goes in, and they find a really good story where airplane parts are falling off of that company, and Ron Burgundy was supposed to play it. This was when the car chase happened. This is why they covered the car chase. And Ron Burgundy, this is where the whole scene happens. And so... And it's also the reason why...
And the thing is that his friend, the co-anchor, the porn shooter, the pussy shooter, pun intended, he wrote the story about the airplane parts falling out of the sky. So when he
it's
pulled
called
it...
Death from Above. That was the name of the story. And they ended up pulling it, and I think that's what caused this team to be mad at him.
Right.
Because he wasn't explaining what was happening, and it was all based on synergy, and synergy is the idea where... two businesses work together to promote their own products. So they went farther and...
And of course they make the Australian the bad guy.
Yeah, of course.
They're all criminals, people. I've been saying this for years.
Or chemist. I had a horrible Australian chemist teacher. It was horrible. I had a Japanese chemistry teacher and an Australian chem lab teacher, and it was horrible. Because I'd go from trying to, like, understand somebody speaking really, really fast, and then go to a full-blown Australian accent, and in 20 minutes. And it did not work because I would miss, like, the first 20 minutes of each class.
The train just fell off its tracks and killed millions of people.
It's okay.
You're derailing.
But I want them to understand, because the way I felt there in those classes is how I felt listening to this character when he first started, and it's part of the joke, because they have him speaking in such an Australian tone that no one in the newsroom understood him, period, when he was introduced. And it was funny to a point, but then eventually pulls the accent back. But back to the main story, going farther on.
Millions are dead.
Thousands died that day. And so Ron Burgundy now has Jack Lame, who's upset with him. His team's mad with him, and he's being introduced because he is now the official best anchor ever. And Jack Lame sabotages him. I'm not going to say how because I don't want to go too far in detail. but he ends up making Ron Burgundy go blind, and
then this is the point where, like, this is just me being like a classical nut, but I did like the Icarus illusion that the narrator had.
And what was that? Go in depth.
Icarus.
I'm an idiot. Let's go farther.
You fly too high to the sun, your wings melt.
Okay. So Bible definition. Okay.
Icarus is Greek.
It's also in the Bible.
No.
Yes.
Icarus isn't biblical. It's Greek.
Icarus is in the Bible.
I apparently haven't read the Bible recently.
I don't think it's under the same name, but it is in the Bible.
The same archetype is probably not. Oh wow, I just killed thousands. Okay.
Derailed. We're on the same train apparently. So back anyway. So Ron Burgundy now is blind, has no friends. You know, he disowned his son, and so eventually
he moves to a lighthouse.
Yeah, for no reason. No, and he goes to feed checkers with cock on it, like caulking, and
I don't have to bleep that out because this is cock, not.
You have to bleep the last one out, but so, and his news team comes to see him as a gentleman visit, and they sit down, and Brick actually takes up a piece of checker and
bites it in half. It says, "I must have your recipe."
And so anyway, Ron Burgundy goes through the thing where everything he ate and has done, and everyone's like baffled at why he has done these things.
Remember, when they first cut to the scene, he is lighting logs in the dishwasher.
And there's a plant in the stove, and then in the fridge is his shoes. So like things we would obviously figure out if you're blind, but he
can't function as a normal person, so obviously he just goes downhill when he's blind.
So eventually he's sitting there, and they drive away. The news anchor leaves him because he doesn't want to. He's throwing a pity party, pretty much.
Yeah.
He's like, feel sorry for me. I'm Ron Burgundy. Yada yada yada. So they end up leaving, and he chases them out into the front lawn and lays down in the front lawn. And Victoria,
what lawn? He lives on a peninsula in a lighthouse.
It's a lawn. There's grass. You can mow it. It's a lawn.
You are very American, good sir.
So
I just lost half my subscribers that line.
Well,
but yeah, he chases them out into the lawn. You are stealing this review from me. He chases them out into the lawn, and his ex-wife shows up.
His ex-wife shows up. He gets up and he goes into the lighthouse, and she starts taking care of him, and everything's going great. You know, they're having...
Like, he learns how to paint even though he's blind.
Yeah, like, he learns how to paint like Pablo Picasso. Like, he learns how...
Picasso's the dude where he put, like, the noses where the ears are.
Yeah, he goes through those stages. Calm down. And then he goes even farther and does Van Gogh style, and he actually ends up getting very, very realistic and not being so surrealistic. And he's like, it looks horrible, doesn't it? And it's actually a beautiful, beautiful picture. So he goes even farther. Crap. I'm sorry. And he's sitting there, and he eventually works everything out. And finally, it cuts to a scene where Ron Burgundy's sitting in a chair, and Victoria comes back into the house. Ron Burgundy hits play on the answering machine, and it's the 12th call, and the last messages were getting deleted for him to get his eyesight back, which, of course...
The wife was deleting.
Yeah, of course, the wife was deleting the messages and not telling him, because she didn't want him to get his eyesight back, because she didn't want him ditching the family again. And, well, he goes back and he gets his eyesight. First, he tries driving in a car, and... Then
instantly
crashes and yells back into the lighthouse, call me a cab. I'm blind. And so then they go farther in, goes back to the newsroom, and his son has a recital. And now we're getting towards the end of the movie.
Yeah, and, now we're leading into the third act. He gets his eyesight back, and, you know, he instantly goes into the newsroom. And apparently every news station has copied what he's done for those ratings.
But they have now he's at the news station, and what to get all of his ratings back and to bring him back into Ron Burgundy, they actually got exclusive rights to a single car chase with a celebrity
actress
who cut off her boyfriend, bit off her husband or boyfriend's penis, and they had, and she was in a car chase. So
because the car chase is what made him so famous to begin with.
Well,
it's a bookends.
He ended up quitting his job live on air and exposing the planes as crap. He doesn't explain why, he just says they're crap. And leaves to go to his son's recital. And this is by far the best.
Like, okay.
This is where everyone shows up.
No. This movie, like, I was loving this movie. I was laughing. I love stupid comedy. I mean, I'm a critic, but I love stupid comedy. I'm no Roger Ebert, okay? My favorite movie is Down Periscope. But as going through this movie, it was a solid 8. This scene shows up. 10 out of 10.
The scene.
And by the way, I only have 4 10 out of 10 movies in my life, okay?
And this is where...
Think about that for a second.
This is where Jim Carrey makes an experience...
his cameo.
His cameo. Will Smith makes a cameo. You know, Vince Vaughn comes in a little bit later, but they have a...
It's the newest actor fight scene from the first movie.
But with, like...
Blown the this is where the budget went. This is where the budget went.
This was ridiculous. Like, I'm talking, they had... Rick had a future weapon. Like, it was...
No, he had the trident first.
Yeah, he came in with the trident, and then somehow the trident turned into a future weapon. And then they go through this entire fight scene. There's a frickin' Tauren.
No, it's a Minotaur.
Oh, Minotaur, I'm sorry. There's a Minotaur.
You need to start playing WoW again.
Yeah, I do. That's why I got confused. There is the ghost of...
Stonewall Jackson from the Civil War, who eats souls.
MTV, the news team from MTV is showing up.
That's where Will Smith comes in.
BBC shows up.
And they're all British and Cockney.
Liam Neeson actually has a cameo as well.
Liam Neeson's in this?
Yeah!
I didn't notice him.
He was the history buff who had Stonewall Jackson.
Oh.
And then the guy who fired Ron Burgundy shows up and he turns into a werewolf.
No, a were-hyena.
Oh, a were-hyena. I am sorry. I have to quote that correctly. And
this movie is so
they just have an all-out battle. I like crossbow snipers, buildings blowing up. There's fighter jets coming in and blowing people up. Finally, he goes to leave, and
it's Jack LeMay.
Yeah, now it's Jack LeMay, and Ron Burgundy has finally started calling him Jack Lime, but it's still Jack LeMay because he legally had his name changed to Jack Lame. And the old news crew that Ron Burgundy ended up fighting in the first movie shows up to help Ron Burgundy out. And I'm not going to spoil that line because it is one of those badass lines that ever happened.
Greatest line in cinema this year.
It has to be. And so I'm not even going to tell the rest of that part what happens there. I'm just going to let it be.
We kind of need to wrap this up too because I'm getting yelled at. So
we're going to let it be. And so eventually he goes and gets to his kid's recital, and his kid's happy. Will Ferrell's covered in smoke and soot and bruises,
blood.
And his kid finishes the recital. And by the way, the kid's recital is going on. This piano recital is the backdrop music for the entire fight scene. So eventually, they end up back at the lighthouse, and Brick and I forgot the chick's name are getting married. And while Ron Burgundy was blind, he was raising a shark, bottle feeding it, and they named it Dobie. And Dobie's in the water, and he swims out to get Dobie, and Dobie attacks him, and Baxter actually ends up saving him.
Again.
And they end up swimming back to shore, and that ends the movie. But there is so many more... That's horrible grammar. There's so much more that happens in that movie that you just need to see it. It is a great movie all on its own. And it's going to stand out if you like the first one, like I said, you're gonna love this one. It by far beat all of my expectations. I was dying laughing. I left the theater speechless because they couldn't talk anymore. Like normally I stay to watch to see if there's an end credit scene, but we just left. And it wasn't a bad leave. It was, I can't take anymore. I have to leave. Like, it hurts to stay. It's pretty much the intake on the review. Do you have anything else?
Final thoughts?
It was. I would give it 2 thumbs up. It was a great movie.
Final thoughts? This movie is stupid, but I love it anyway. Movie of the year, guys.
And good night.